Gary Cooper paid his Montana home one last visit in April 1961, just a few weeks before he died. For many years, no one would find out what he left behind. A group of hidden paintings, a saddle that changed the course of Hollywood history, and memories that showed who the real man was behind the fame. It was at this ranch that his biggest fans would learn about his breaks and his runaway from fame. We can finally tell you what they found at the 7 Bar 9 today. He was born in Helena, Montana, on May 7, 1901. His name changed over time to Gary Cooper. Charles and Alice were his parents, and they were from England. There was a big storm in town the night he was born. People said the loud thunderclap when Frank the baby first cried sounded like nature letting everyone know that someone important was here. Montana is a beautiful place to grow up, but Frank's folks kept their English traditions. At home, Frank and his brother Arthur had to speak good British English and be very polite at the table, even though they lived in the Wild West. Frank's dad used to be a lawyer and then a judge. He took Frank to the Montana State Capitol a lot, where Frank liked to watch arguments and look at the Western art on the walls. Frank became who he is because of this mix of life on the frontier and English ideals. There was a flood in 1908 when Frank was only 7 years old. A nearby dam had broken. As the water level rose, Frank's mother grabbed him, jumped on a horse, and rode to safety. What Frank learned from this close call is that nature is very powerful. There were times in Frank's early life that showed what would happen to him. He won a contest by reading a poem with such emotion that everyone in the room stood up and cheered. As time went on, the vaudeville act in the crowd said that Cooper Boy could become famous one day. They would believe it now even though no one did at the time. Frank's dad bought the 7 Bar 9, a 600-acre cattle ranch, when Frank was 5 years old. It was hard to live on the land. When it was cold outside, Frank got up early to do work. He once said that moving manure in the cold doesn't sound lovely, but it does teach you a lot. When he was 12, a bull charged him, which was scary. He got away by quickly directing his horse into a group of trees. He became interested in Native American culture because of the land. When digging a well, some workers found things like arrowheads. Frank became interested in their past. Frank and his brother were sent to England to go to school when Frank was 9 years old. His mom wanted them to go to a good school. It was hard to go from living on a ranch to a strict English boarding school. Frank said it was like going from calling cows to reading Shakespeare all at once. He went back to Montana during school breaks and told his friends crazy stories about life on the ranch. They believed he was lying. Frank fell in love with art and books. He liked reading Shakespeare and Dickens, which helped him make his playing more realistic. He was also awkward at times, like when he went to school in cowboy boots and a Stetson, which made a lot of people laugh. Because of World War I, he could no longer stay in England and moved back to Montana in 1914. It was hard for him to fit in back at home. He stood out because of how British he was. People in the area made fun of his accent. Still, he worked hard to get back to farming and get in touch with the land. Frank showed how unique he was when he was 17. His speech at a nearby rodeo was a mix of cowboy slang and Shakespearean lines. People were shocked. He would become a Hollywood star because of his ability to balance rough and smooth. Life changed for good for Gary Cooper on his 15th birthday. Helena, Montana, on May 7, 1916. Gary also chose to take a drive with his friend Harvey Markham. The day began with fun and energy, but it ended badly. Harvey was going when all of a sudden, the car lost control. It turned over and over before falling on its back. Gary was stuck under the wreckage, hurt very badly and in a lot of pain. He was so weak when he finally got free. It felt like his left side didn't belong to him. It was heavy and useless. Doctors at the hospital fixed his cuts and bruises, but they never took an x-ray to see that his hip was broken. Gary's life would never be the same after this mistake. His hip didn't get better like it should have, that he would have to live with for the rest of his days. Gary had to grow up quickly after the accident. There was less care in his life now. He now had to deal with pain and getting better. The doctor didn't know how bad his hip was, so he told him that horseback riding might help it get better. Gary felt it was the right thing to do, so he went back to his family's land and began riding every day. But it made things worse instead of better. His hip healed wrong because of the constant bumps from riding, leaving him with a limp and constant pain. Gary didn't give up, even though it was tough. He clenched his teeth through the pain for hours on horseback. He learned his own way to walk and ride over time to deal with his pain. He walked a little funny, with a limp, but that made him stand out. He leaned a little to one side while riding a horse, which gave him a style that people would later recognize on screen. He went from Montana to Los Angeles when he was 23 years old in 1924. He wished to be a painter. Early that year, Gary's father had gone there to take care of some family estates. Gary thought it was the right time to follow his dream. He had been an art major for 2 years in college and drew comics for a newspaper in Montana. He was sure of his skills, but things didn't go as planned. A lot of people in Los Angeles were going after their dreams. But Gary had a hard time getting steady work in ads. His first job was to paint ads for cough drops on theater curtains, which wasn't what he had planned. To make money, he worked any job he could find, like selling signs or supporting a photographer's work. When he could, he even took more art classes. Life wasn't easy for him, but he did his best. Things changed in early 1925. Gary saw two old Montana friends, who were extras, and you. It was easy and quiet, but it worked because it felt real. When he was young in Montana, he didn't talk much. He watched more than he talked. This showed in the way he acted. He would cut lines down when he couldn't remember them, which gave his characters a calm, quiet way of speaking. Directors liked this about him because they said he could show strong feelings with just his face or a small movement. In 1941, he played a real-life war hero in Sergeant York, which won him an Oscar for being so honest and emotional. In 1952's High Noon, he played a sheriff who was having a moral crisis. He was scared, strong, and determined without saying much. He won his second Oscar for this part. Cooper did more than just become a well-known actress. Aside from that, he made a lot of money in Hollywood. In 1937, he was getting $370,214 a year, which is a lot of money these days. He was the richest person in the United States in 1939, making $482,819 a year. He also knew a lot about money. Instead of getting paid a lot of money up front, he would ask to get a cut of the money his films made. This paid off, like when he made $1.4 million from 1954's Veracruz. But his high income also caused him trouble. In 1941, he owed back taxes of $280,000 and had to sell his art collection, which had works by Picasso, Renoir, and other great artists. Gary Cooper had a very interesting and scandalous life in the late 1920s and early 1930s. He became well known for both his acting and the many times he slept with some of Hollywood's biggest stars. When he worked with Lupe Velez on The Wolf Song in 1929, they became friends. The fights they had in public were so public that everyone in Hollywood talked about them. Velez, who was angry and jealous, took Cooper's pants off in front of everyone to smell another woman's cologne. But it wasn't even close to what happened in 1930. Velez lost it when he saw lipstick on his collar during one of their many fights. She got a knife and ran after him through the house. He tried to avoid her, but she caught him in his study and hurt his arm so badly that he had to get 15 stitches. Cooper's team tried to hide it by saying he had an accident at home, but the truth came out in the end. He didn't press charges, though, and he even got back together with Velez later, telling his friends, "That's just Lupe. She loves deeply, and her hands are sometimes part of that." In June 1931, at Los Angeles' Union Station, the end of Cooper and Velez's crazy partnership took place. Cooper was at the station, getting ready to leave for Europe and take a train to New York. Velez was mad that he was going, so he rushed to the station and made a scene. She yelled at him in front of everyone and called him a son of a bitch. Then she pulled out a gun and shot him. The bullet missed and hit a column instead, but it scared everyone in the crowd. He didn't look scared, though. While Velez faded into the crowd, he got on the train. The news spread all over the country about the story. After the fact, Velez said the gun was just a toy pistol meant to scare him, but the damage had already been done. It was over between them for good. In 1930, Cooper slept with someone else, this time Marlene Dietrich. As Dietrich filmed Morocco, she was brave and stylish, and her unique unisex look made her stand out. They became inseparable in real life because of how well they got along on film. They were often seen together in high-class restaurants and nightclubs, which kept the gossip pages busy. After that, Cooper slept with Carole Lombard in 1931 while they were filming I Take This Woman. Lombard, who was married to William Powell, was known for how smart and funny she was. People were joking when she said Cooper was hung like a horse and could stay out all night. This made them talk about him even more. Cooper's charm wasn't just in his relationships. Cooper worked with Howard Hawks on a number of films, and Hawks reportedly called him a snake when it came to women. Hawks talked about how Cooper could handle several relationships at once, even while shooting. Cooper was seeing Joan Crawford, Veronica Balfe, who would become his wife, and a young actor all at the same time, while making Today We Live in 1933. Hawks said it was an art form in lying. Cooper's work never took a hit, even after all the scandals. He stayed one of Hollywood's most popular stars and kept up his image as an All-American. Hawks said it all very well. He was a great hero on screen. He broke a lot of hearts off screen, but he was sure sweet while he did it. Rocky Balfe and Gary Cooper got married on December 15, 1933. In New York's Church of Our Lady of Lourdes, more than 250 people came to the big and fancy wedding. Gary was 32 years old, and Rocky, who was only 20, used to be an actor named Sandra Shaw. She had even been in the big movie King Kong. But when she met Gary, she quit acting to marry him. They first met at a party that Countess de Frasso threw 6 months before. Gary, who was loved for his good looks and many affairs, was drawn to Rocky right away. She was more than pretty. She was smart, beautiful, and even the best at skeet shooting. Their wedding was just as fancy as their getaway. On the SS Rex, they set sail for Naples. From there, they went to Rome, Paris, and London. After that, Gary hunted big game on an African tour. He killed more than 60 animals on this trip, including a rhinoceros and a cat. Even though there was a lot of excitement, trouble soon followed. Gary was known for playing, but he couldn't stay faithful. He was already close to his co-star Fay Wray on the set of Viva Villa, just a few weeks after their wedding. It got hard for Rocky to trust him because he kept acting this way. The 15th of September, 1937, saw the birth of their daughter, Maria Veronica Cooper. Before Maria was born, Gary was scared and paced the hospital halls. "She looks like a skinned rabbit when she saw her," he joked. "I guess they all do at first." Gary seemed kinder after having a child. He loved being a dad and often brought Maria with him to filming. He also showed her how to do things outside, like riding horses and shooting at their ranch in Sun Valley, Idaho. Maria started shooting with him when she was 10 years old. But Gary didn't stop having affairs, even though he was a good dad. This caused problems in the family. Maria later wrote in her autobiography that their home was full of love and stress that wasn't said out loud. Gary's first real relationship began in 1948 with Patricia Neal, who was a lot younger than him. They met on the set of The Fountainhead and fell in love because of how well they worked together on screen. They didn't try to hide it. A lot of the time, they go to parties and places together. This really upset Rocky and even Maria, who said she spat on the ground when she saw Patricia. Pat became pregnant with Gary's child in 1950. Gary set up for her to have an abortion so that there wouldn't be a scandal. Patricia later said that she would always regret that choice. She wasn't the only woman in Gary's life, though. At this time, gossip magazines tied him to Grace Kelly, Ingrid Bergman, and other women. These problems caused Gary a lot of stress, which hurt his health. He had surgery in 1951 for wounds that were bleeding. These were probably caused by the stress of living 2 lives at once. Rocky found love letters from Patricia in Gary's desk in May 1951. This was the last straw for everyone. They fought a lot. Their 13-year-old daughter Maria locked herself in her room to get away from the noise. Gary soon left and stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The media went crazy while Rocky stayed in their home in Brentwood. Reporters camped out outside to get any news. Rocky was able to get a good deal that included support of $1,100 a week, which was a lot at the time. Gary's job lost some ground. People said that his messy personal life was to blame for the failure of his movie Distant Drums. That changed when he played in High Noon and won an Oscar in 1952. This helped fix his image. At about the same time, Gary broke up with Patricia Neal and sent her a mink coat as a farewell gift. Patricia said that the years she spent with Gary were some of the worst of her life. Gary and Rocky never got divorced, even though they were no longer together. They both dated other people, but they couldn't get over each other. Maria felt trapped because she spent time with both of her parents. She wrote in her journal that she wished she could spend all the time with both of them. He was 40 years old in 1941, and people were beginning to wonder if his days as a main man were over. That's when he got the part of Alvin York in Sergeant York. York was a real-life hero in World War I. He was a pacifist at first but turned into a brave fighter. Cooper was great for the part because he was calm and played it straight. The movie came out on July 2nd, 1941, just before the United States started the war. It made $6.4 million, which was more than any other movie that year. Some critics said he did a great job of showing York's inner fight. He got his first Oscar for it on February 26, 1942. It only took 17 seconds for him to give his winning speech. He said that this award went to Sergeant Alvin York. I just put on his clothes. It was a big moment in his work life. For High Noon, he won his second Oscar in 1952. He played Marshal Wilkane, a police officer who was up against a group of killers by himself. It came out on July 24, 1952. Some people didn't like it at first, but as time went on, they saw it as a classic. A lot of people thought the movie was also a message about the blacklist era in Hollywood. Cooper didn't want to play the part. He was 50 years old and had health issues like a sore that was bleeding and back pain. Stanley Kramer, the producer, talked him out of it, and Cooper's worn-out, worldly look was right for the part. He wasn't there to accept his award at the 1953 Academy Awards because he was in Mexico shooting Blowing Wild. He joked, "I'm going to go back and find my favorite actor and give him this." John Wayne took the award for him. Crowe's favorite part was as Lou Gehrig in The Pride of the Yankees, 1942. Cooper didn't want the part at first, which was a surprise. Gehrig quit baseball when he was 36 years old, so he was a lot younger than him. Cooper didn't know anything about baseball either. He had never even been to a game. He made fun of it by saying, "I don't even know how to hold a bat." Cooper also thought it might be too soon to make a movie about Gehrig, since he had died in 1941 from ALS. But Eleanor Gehrig, who was married to Gehrig, went to see Cooper and asked him to play the part. His passionate plea won him over. The next few days saw the attack on Pearl Harbor, which made Cooper decide to make the movie to boost confidence in the West. He trained hard with Lefty O'Dowd, a former Yankees starter, to get ready. Cooper even learned to hit and throw with his left hand, just like Gehrig. The Pride of the Yankees was a big hit when it first came out on July 14, 1942. The movie was nominated for 11 Oscars and got good reviews from critics. Many people think this was Cooper's best act, even though he didn't win an award for it. Cooper's personal life began a new chapter when he and his wife Rocky got back together in 1954. Cooper and Rocky started getting back together after being apart for years because of his fling with Patricia Neal. They were seen together again, and their family even spent Christmas together. During this time, Cooper's interest in Catholicism grew, which is the religion of his wife and daughter. This made their relationship stronger. The Coopers chose to build a new house together as a sign of their fresh start. Cooper paid $35,000 for a 2-acre plot of land on Baroda Drive in Holmaby Hills on February 8, 1953. They worked together to build their new home, which was a sign of their renewed dedication to each other and to their marriage. Cooper's public image and job changed a lot after they got back together. He started to play roles that were more like adults, like his part in Friendly Reasoning, 1956, which got him praise from critics. People thought that his acting as a Quaker farmer during the Civil War, who was torn between pacifist beliefs, showed how he had grown as a person. Maria, the couple's daughter, later said that seeing them again was the best treat her parents could have given her. Cooper's health started to get worse in 1960. He was told that his prostate cancer was very aggressive and had spread to his stomach. His situation got worse despite surgeries and other treatments. Cooper kept going to work.